Hi, everyone. I've been holding this story in for a while, and honestly, I need an outside perspective. I'm Kayla, 28, and I've been engaged to my fiancé Ryan, 30, for about 8 months now. We've been busy planning our dream wedding, scheduled for October. Everything was going perfectly, until last week when my parents dropped an unexpected bombshell that left me reeling. A bit of context. I have a younger sister, Jennifer, who's 25. She's always been the golden child of our family. Jenna has been dating her boyfriend, Alex, 26, for about 2 years, and my parents absolutely adore her. Growing up, it always felt like Jenna got the royal treatment while I was an afterthought. I hate to sound bitter, but it stung to see my accomplishments consistently overshadowed by hers. Back in high school, I was a straight-A student and played on the volleyball team, while Jenna was a cheerleader. Somehow my achievements were always overshadowed by her events, no matter how minor. Don't get me wrong, I respect cheerleading as much as any sport, but would it have killed my parents to show the same enthusiasm for my accomplishments? Over time, I learned not to expect anything from them and built my own life around the idea that I couldn't rely on them for validation. When I met Ryan in college, everything changed. He showed me that I was worthy of love and respect, and helped me see that it wasn't fair to blame Jenna for our parents' favoritism. With his encouragement, I began trying to rebuild my relationship with Jenna. It wasn't easy at first. She was hesitant, and I had a lot of resentment to unpack. But over time, we started to bond again. We talked about everything, from life plans to silly little moments, and I was genuinely happy to see our relationship improving. When Ryan proposed, Jenna was the first person I told, and she was just as thrilled as I was. She even promised to help me plan my wedding. Fast forward to last Wednesday. My mom called me out of the blue, asking about how the wedding preparations were coming along. I was surprised. She hadn't shown much interest before, but I was happy to share the progress we'd made. After a bit of small talk, she finally got to the point. Jenna and Alex were planning to get engaged. At first, I was thrilled for her, but then my mom dropped the real bombshell. She asked me to postpone my wedding so Jenna could have a full year of being the center of attention with her engagement. I was floored. My parents wanted me to put off my carefully planned wedding, complete with deposits on vendors and venues, so Jenna could bask in the spotlight for her engagement photos and social media posts. I tried to reason with my mom, offering to keep my wedding low-key and off social media, but she wouldn't budge. She insisted that postponing was the only way to avoid overshadowing Jenna's big moment. To make matters worse, she threatened to withdraw the financial support they'd promised for the wedding if I didn't comply. It felt like blackmail, plain and simple. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about years of being sidelined for Jenna's sake. I told my mom how unfair and hurtful this was, but she accused me of being selfish and inconsiderate of Jenna's feelings. That was the breaking point. I refused to let them dictate my life anymore. But the drama didn't end there. My frustration and anger boiled over, leading me to confront Jenna's boyfriend, Alex. What happened next set off a chain of events I couldn't have anticipated. I couldn't shake the anger and frustration after that call with my mom. How could she even ask me to postpone my wedding, a day Ryan and I had spent months planning, for something as superficial as Jenna's engagement photos and social media posts? It felt like my entire life was being reduced to second place again. The worst part? It wasn't Jenna asking me directly. It was my parents, her usual cheerleaders, pushing me aside to make sure their golden child stayed in the spotlight. For a moment, I wondered if Jenna even knew what they were asking of me. But honestly, at that point, I didn't care. My frustration kept building until I did something I never thought I would. I called Alex, Jenna's boyfriend. I'm not proud of how I handled it, I'll admit that up front. But I was angry and hurt. I wanted someone to know what I'd been dealing with, and Alex seemed like the only person who could understand the weight of Jenna being the center of attention all the time. When Alex picked up, I didn't beat around the bush. I told him about Jenna's behavior, particularly an incident from months earlier that I hadn't mentioned to anyone before. It happened during a rare double date, Ryan and I with Jenna and Alex. It had been a fun evening, filled with laughter and good conversation. At one point, Jenna and I stepped away to the restroom, and that's when things got messy. As we were fixing our makeup, Jenna handed me her phone to hold while she washed her hands. A text notification popped up on her screen, and I saw it was from someone named Mike. The message read, "Can't wait to see you again." My heart sank. I knew about Mike. He was Jenna's ex, someone she had dated seriously before Alex. I couldn't help myself. I asked her, "Who's Mike? What does he mean by see you again?" At first, Jenna tried to brush it off, claiming it was nothing, just an old friend reaching out. But I wasn't buying it. When I pressed her, she admitted they'd been texting on and off, but insisted it was harmless. "Alex doesn't need to know," she said, rolling her eyes like I was overreacting. I let it go at the time, mostly because she promised me she wasn't talking to Mike anymore. But now, as my wedding plans were falling apart because of her, all those feelings of resentment came rushing back. So, in a moment of anger, I told Alex about that text and suggested he keep an eye on Jenna. I'll admit, I didn't tell him in the calmest or most tactful way. It came out like word vomit, fueled by months, no, years, of feeling like I was playing second fiddle to my sister. After I hung up, I immediately regretted it. Not because what I said was wrong, but because of how I said it. I knew I'd probably just added fuel to an already smoldering fire. 2 days later, my mom called again. The second I picked up, she started yelling. "How could you do this to your sister?" she screamed, her voice filled with rage. I had no idea what she was talking about at first, but then it all clicked. Alex must have confronted Jenna about the text I mentioned. My mom told me that Jenna had gone to meet Alex, thinking he was about to propose, only to be blindsided. Alex had confronted her about the texts with Mike, and after some back and forth, she finally admitted it. According to my mom, Alex was furious and broke up with her right then and there. Now, Jenna was devastated, and my parents were blaming me for ruining her life. I tried explaining to my mom that I only brought it up because of everything they'd been asking me to sacrifice for Jenna. But she wasn't having it. She accused me of being jealous and spiteful, saying that I was trying to sabotage Jenna's happiness. My dad even got on the phone and told me they were withdrawing all financial support for the wedding. At that moment, I felt like I had lost everything. My parents, Jenna, and the wedding Ryan and I had dreamed of. When Ryan came back from his business trip a few days later, I told him everything. I was nervous he'd be upset with me for how I handled the situation, but he was the opposite. Ryan reassured me that we'd figure it out, with or without my parents' help. He reminded me that what I did, while not perfect, was rooted in honesty. Together, we decided we wouldn't let this derail our plans. We'd move forward with the wedding, even if it meant cutting costs and asking for help from friends and family. One of Ryan's friends came through with an affordable venue option, and things slowly started to come together. But the damage to my family was done. My parents made it clear they wouldn't attend the wedding, and word started spreading among relatives. Jenna had spun the narrative to make me look like the villain, claiming I had sabotaged her engagement out of jealousy. Some of my relatives bought her story, refusing to RSVP to the wedding or even respond at all. It was exhausting and heartbreaking, but I knew deep down I had done the right thing. Even so, I couldn't shake the guilt of how everything unfolded. Things only got worse after the fallout from Jenna and Alex's breakup. My parents had fully taken Jenna's side, and their support for her seemed more unwavering than ever. Meanwhile, my wedding plans continued, albeit on a much tighter budget. Ryan and I were determined to move forward, but the strain on our relationship and the added pressure from my family were taking a toll. Just when I thought I was beginning to handle the situation, I received an unexpected call from Meg, an old childhood friend. I hadn't spoken to Meg in years. We'd lost touch after I moved out for college. Jenna, however, had stayed in contact with her longer, and their friendship had fizzled out only a few years ago. Meg had heard about the drama through the grapevine, likely from Jenna, and decided to reach out. What she told me left me stunned. "Kayla," she began cautiously, "I need to tell you something about Jenna. It's been eating at me, especially now that everything's coming out." She went on to recount an incident that had happened at her 25th birthday party about a year ago. Jenna had attended the party alone because Alex was out of town on a business trip. As the night wore on and the drinks flowed, Meg noticed Jenna getting increasingly flirtatious with several of the male guests, including Meg's boyfriend at the time. At first, Meg brushed it off as Jenna being her usual charismatic, attention-loving self. But as the party wound down, Meg realized Jenna and her boyfriend were nowhere to be found. After searching the house, she walked in on them kissing in one of the back rooms. The revelation had destroyed Meg's relationship with her boyfriend and ended her friendship with Jenna. "I didn't want to cause a bigger scene back then," Meg admitted. "But now that I see how she's painted you as the bad guy, I can't stay silent anymore." Hearing this new information confirmed what I'd been suspecting. Jenna's behavior wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. Knowing this, I asked Meg if she'd be willing to share this information with Alex directly. I thought it might help him fully understand the situation and confirm that my warnings about Jenna hadn't come from a place of malice or jealousy. Meg agreed. And a few days later, Alex reached out to me. We met at a coffee shop, where he shared how devastated he'd been after everything came to light. He'd been second-guessing his decision to end things with Jenna, wondering if he had overreacted. But after hearing Meg's account, he was sure he'd made the right choice. "She played me for a fool," Alex said, his voice heavy with sadness. "But honestly, I'm glad I found out before I made the mistake of proposing." Our conversation brought some closure to both of us. Alex thanked me for being honest with him, even though the truth had been painful. He planned to take time to heal and start fresh, possibly even moving to a new city. Meanwhile, things with my family only grew more complicated. My parents, enraged by Alex's breakup with Jenna and the subsequent gossip about her infidelity, decided to take their anger to the next level. One evening, while I was at work, I received a panicked call from Ryan. "You need to come home," he said, his voice tense. "Now." When I arrived, Ryan handed me a letter that had been slipped under our door. It was from a lawyer representing my parents. They were threatening to sue me for defamation and emotional distress over the fallout from Jenna's broken engagement. I couldn't believe it. My own parents, people who were supposed to love and support me, were taking legal action against me. The letter demanded a public apology to Jenna and a retraction of my statements, along with a financial settlement. It was vindictive, even for them. As if that weren't enough, Jenna called me shortly after. Her voice was a mixture of rage and desperation. She accused me of ruining her life, claiming that she'd lost her job because Alex had shared the news of her cheating with their mutual friends and co-workers. She said she was now a social pariah, with everyone in their circle gossiping about her. "It's all your fault," she screamed. "You've always hated me, and now you've finally gotten what you wanted." I tried to reason with her, reminding her that she needed to take responsibility for her actions, but she refused to listen. She hung up on me after hurling a few more accusations my way. That night, Ryan and I sat down to figure out our next steps. We couldn't afford to get tangled in a legal battle, but we also couldn't let my parents bully us into submission. The situation was overwhelming, but Ryan remained my rock. "We'll get through this," he said, his hand firmly in mine. I reached out to a lawyer the next day, who was as baffled as I was by the situation. He assured me that my parents didn't have a strong case and even suggested preparing a counterclaim if they decided to proceed. He also encouraged me to gather as much evidence as possible to prove the truth about Jenna's behavior. Amid all this chaos, I received a surprising call from Alex's mother. She wanted to thank me for being honest with Alex, saying that he was heartbroken but grateful to have found out the truth before making a lifelong commitment. Her kind words were a small comfort in the midst of the storm. As the days went on, my parents doubled down on their threats. They even showed up at our house unannounced, demanding that I apologize to Jenna and fix the situation. The confrontation escalated quickly, with my dad accusing me of destroying the family and my mom sobbing about Jenna's heartbreak. But I refused to back down. "Jenna's actions have consequences," I told them firmly. "I won't apologize for telling the truth." They left in fury, vowing to proceed with the lawsuit. After the heated confrontation with my parents, the tension in my life was unbearable. It felt like everything was crumbling. My family was fractured, my wedding was still in limbo, and I couldn't escape the constant guilt hanging over me. But I knew I couldn't give in to their demands. This wasn't just about my wedding anymore. It was about standing up for myself after a lifetime of being overlooked and dismissed. Ryan was my anchor through it all. He kept reminding me that we were doing the right thing, even though it felt like the whole world was against us. "You've put up with this your entire life," he told me one night as we worked on rebudgeting the wedding. "It's time you put yourself first." As we braced for the lawsuit my parents threatened, I kept gathering evidence to back my side of the story. Meg, the childhood friend who had told me about Jenna's previous infidelity, agreed to provide a written statement about what happened at her birthday party. She even offered to testify if things escalated to court. Her support meant the world to me, not just legally but emotionally. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. One weekend, my parents made another attempt to strong-arm me. They showed up at my house with Jenna in tow, demanding a family meeting. Ryan and I reluctantly agreed, hoping this might finally lead to some resolution. As soon as they sat down, my mom started in with her usual spiel. I was selfish. I had ruined Jenna's life, and the only way to make things right was to apologize and cancel my wedding. Jenna, sitting beside her, looked smug, like she thought I'd cave under the pressure. My dad sat silently, his arms crossed, his face a mask of disapproval. I let them talk. I listened to every accusation, every guilt trip, and every emotional manipulation they threw at me. And then I stood up and said, "Enough." I told them I wasn't going to apologize for telling the truth. I reminded them of the text messages I saw on Jenna's phone and how she had dismissed them as nothing. I brought up the incident at Meg's party and showed them the written statement Meg had provided. I even handed them the messages where Jenna admitted to cheating and begged Meg not to tell Alex. My parents' faces fell. Jenna turned pale, her smugness replaced by panic. "That's not true," she stammered, but the evidence was undeniable. I pulled out one last piece of proof, a letter from Alex himself, detailing how Jenna had confessed when he confronted her and how it had devastated him. "This isn't about jealousy," I said, my voice steady but firm. "This is about accountability. Jenna's actions have consequences, and it's time she faced them. I won't apologize for standing up for myself, and I won't cancel my wedding to cater to her need for attention." My dad's face turned red with anger, but for once it wasn't directed at me. My mom sat there silent and stunned. Jenna, on the other hand, burst into tears. "You've ruined my life," she sobbed. "Why can't you just leave me alone?" I looked at her and said, "I didn't ruin your life, Jenna. You did." The meeting ended with my parents storming out again, Jenna trailing behind them. I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground, and while it didn't bring the resolution I had hoped for, it brought me a sense of peace. I was done trying to appease people who couldn't see my worth. The fallout was swift. My parents officially withdrew their financial support for the wedding, and word of our confrontation spread through the family. Some relatives reached out to offer their support, while others took my parents' side, painting me as the villain in their version of events. It hurt to see people I cared about believe such a twisted narrative, but I reminded myself that their opinions didn't define me. Meanwhile, Ryan and I pressed on with our plans. We found ways to cut costs without sacrificing the things that mattered most to us. Friends and extended family stepped in to help, offering everything from DIY decorations to discounted services. One of Ryan's friends even found us an affordable photographer who was willing to work within our budget. In the midst of all this chaos, I received an unexpected message from Alex. He thanked me again for being honest with him and told me that he had decided to move to a new city to start fresh. He said he was working on rebuilding his life and was grateful to me for helping him see the truth before it was too late. Hearing from Alex gave me a sense of closure I didn't know I needed. It reminded me that despite the fallout with my family, I had done the right thing. Jenna's heartbreak was a direct result of her own choices, not my actions. And while I couldn't control how my parents or relatives saw me, I could control how I responded. Ryan and I finalized our wedding plans, knowing it wouldn't be the extravagant celebration we had originally envisioned, but confident it would still be a day filled with love and joy. As the date approached, I began to feel a sense of excitement again, even amid the lingering drama. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of emotions. While Ryan and I focused on making the day special, the tension with my family continued to linger in the background. My parents and Jenna made no effort to reconcile. In fact, They doubled down on their narrative, spinning stories about me to extended family members, claiming I was jealous of Jenna and had sabotaged her life out of spite. Despite this, the kindness of others kept me going. Friends, extended family, and even coworkers stepped up in ways I hadn't expected. A family friend offered to bake the wedding cake as a gift, and Ryan's best friend secured us a beautiful venue at a fraction of the cost. It was humbling and heartwarming to see how many people genuinely cared about us and wanted to help Dot. But as the wedding day approached, I couldn't shake the sadness that my parents wouldn't be there. No matter how much hurt they had caused me, a part of me still longed for their love and approval. I reached out one last time, sending them an invitation with a handwritten note explaining that I wanted them to be part of this milestone in my life. I poured my heart into that letter, hoping they'd see how much their absence would hurt me. They never responded. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up with a mixture of nerves and excitement. It wasn't the day I had originally envisioned, but it was still ours. Ryan and I had worked so hard to make this moment happen, and I was determined to enjoy every second of it. As I walked down the aisle, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. The venue wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect. The people who mattered most, our closest friends and the family members who supported us, were all there, smiling and cheering us on. When I reached Ryan at the altar, I could see the love and pride in his eyes, and for the first time in months, I felt truly at peace. The ceremony was beautiful. Ryan and I exchanged vows we had written ourselves, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. After everything we'd been through, standing there together felt like the ultimate victory. The reception was just as magical. Friends and family danced, laughed, and celebrated with us late into the night. My favorite moment was when Ryan surprised me with a heartfelt speech, thanking everyone for their support and expressing how much he loved me. "Kayla," he said, his voice steady and full of emotion. "You've shown me what strength and resilience look like. Today I'm not just marrying the love of my life, I'm marrying my hero." As I listened, I realized how far I'd come. For so long I had let my parents' favoritism and Jenna's actions dictate how I saw myself. But standing there, surrounded by people who truly cared about us, I knew I was finally free of that weight. After the wedding, Ryan and I took a short honeymoon, a much-needed break from all the drama. During those few days, I reflected on everything that had happened. I didn't regret standing up for myself, even though it had cost me my relationship with my parents and Jenna. Their refusal to acknowledge the truth or take responsibility wasn't my burden to carry anymore. When we returned, life slowly settled back into a new normal. Jenna never reached out, and my parents remained distant. I heard through the grapevine that Jenna was still struggling to rebuild her reputation, but I chose not to dwell on it. She had made her choices, and it wasn't my job to fix the mess she created. What surprised me, though, was the unexpected support I received from some extended family members. Over time, a few of them reached out to apologize for believing the stories my parents had spread about me. They admitted that as more of the truth came to light, they realized I wasn't the villain Jenna had painted me to be. One of the most healing moments came when Alex's mother sent us a handwritten letter. In it, she thanked me again for my honesty and courage, explaining how it had saved her son from making a terrible mistake. "You may not realize it," she wrote, "but your actions changed the course of his life for the better. That kind of bravery is rare, and I hope you never forget how much good you've done." That letter became a turning point for me. It reminded me that despite the pain and the fallout, I had done the right thing. Sometimes doing what's right means standing alone, and while it wasn't easy, I was proud of myself for finally prioritizing my happiness and my future with Ryan. Now, months later, Ryan and I are thriving. Our wedding may not have been the grand event we originally planned, but it was everything we needed. We've built a life filled with love, mutual respect, and unwavering support, a stark contrast to the toxic dynamics I left behind. As for my parents and Jenna, I've accepted that our relationship may never be what I once hoped it could be. But I'm at peace with that. I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who show up, who love you unconditionally, and who celebrate your victories with you. And in Ryan, our friends, and the family members who stood by me. I've found exactly that.